Ohio State had a big time recruiting weekend with multiple players in. Also, players they're pursuing in other towns, visiting other colleges. Of course, we have Marc Givler here to talk about some of the biggest names on the recruiting trail right now and maybe some of the guys that visited this weekend as well. Marc, thank you for coming in. The big news coming out of the weekend was Monsanta Torbert. He was the one that was kind of on and off. Was he going to visit Michigan this weekend or not? Sounds like a lot of rumors out there are saying that visit went pretty well. Could be something that Michigan is feeling is trending toward things with them. With him, what's your feel on the situation? How do you think Ohio State stands with Torbert going on right now?
Yeah, I think Ohio State was hopeful coming out of their visit weekend that he would not visit Michigan. Obviously, that didn't happen. He did visit Michigan. So that's, kind of strike one there if you're Ohio State. Optimism from Ann Arbor seems to be fairly high coming out of the weekend. You would expect some of that, when kids make visits, it's rarely coming out of the weekend like, oh, that went terribly, no shot. So I think part of that is just the optimism that you normally see coming out of a visit. But this one has been a little kind of volatile over the last month or so. I mean, decommits from Indiana, Ohio State trending, Notre Dame trending, cancels Notre Dame. Michigan was now involved. There's been several schools linked to him. So we'll see. I'm more concerned about what this looks like, like Wednesday or Thursday, because right now it's like the visit high and everything else. I'm not ready to call this off for Ohio State. That's kind of been my pick for the last few weeks. Michigan has given him something to think about this weekend. And you have that, again, that natural post-visit optimism that seems to happen with just about every kid. But Ohio State's going to fight this one hard. They needed, really, I think they would have taken 4 corners at one point if it would have been the right 4. But certainly they need 3 in this class. They've got the 2 in-state guys that they've really wanted with Torbert and Deontay Malone. I do think they're going to prioritize this one, especially now that Michigan's kind of emerged as the main competition and kind of wanting, you kind of get a 2-for-1 on that if you can pull a kid that's considering Michigan as well. So let's see how the next few days go. I'm not moving off the pick yet, but obviously things did go well for him up in Ann Arbor.
That's very true. And I think, Jaden Carey and Malone gives you a good amount of kind of base with this year. I think if Torbert was the only cornerback right now, things would be a whole lot more kind of, let's see what's going to happen here. I mean, what's your stance on the cornerback class so far? You said it's possible they could have taken more. Obviously, I like Malone. I like Carey. I think they're both good additions. I think getting a guy like Torbert would only cap that off even better. But what's your thoughts on how the cornerback recruiting has gone so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's solid. When you look at some of the other positions that they're recruiting right now, some of the other position groups are going a little better. It's all kind of relative to, what's going on in other position rooms right now, but it's solid. They definitely need another guy like and a good one, like a Torbert or, a top 100, top 150 type of guy to go with him or with those two. The other interesting thing is if they could wrap this up with Torbert, is you would then have kind of the next, whatever it is, 6 months or so to kind of just cherry pick around the country and see if something doesn't happen with a coaching change or a program, throws up a 3-9 or a 5-7 that, unexpected, and kids start, jumping off the ship, anything like that, where you could maybe get back in on a 5-star kid or a kid that you think is, one of the top 3 or 4 corners in the country. It would put them in a really good position to be able to do that if they wanted to. But solid right now, but they definitely got to get another guy here, and it's got to be a good one. And if it's Torbert, I think that's kind of the perfect blend to this class. They'll have some size, some speed, some guys who can play in the slot. I think this would be a really nice class if Torbert were in it.
It's very interesting how recruiting has kind of changed like that. It really puts the summer into perspective a little bit because of how many guys are being pursued by schools that, I'm just going to be honest about it, are not typically as successful as Ohio State. You look at Jay Timmons last year with him coming in after being committed. I think it was to Florida State, correct? He was committed there, and then he obviously flips late in that cycle when Didn't look like Florida State was things were going super well for them. And so there's always the possibility of that there. And that's why I kind of hold off a little bit if things don't go everything Ohio State's way in June and July and stuff, because there's just so much more time and there's so much that heats up around December time. One guy you would like to lock down, though, you don't really want anything to heat up with him anywhere else, but it does sound like Tennessee is going after David Gabriel George a lot. Now, of course, Ohio State did make the offer to his best friend from Canada, the safety Jordan Darren. I believe I'm pronouncing it right. Gilla? Do you know how to pronounce it?
I believe that's correct. I believe that's correct.
All right, good. I always want to make sure I try to get the names right as best I can. But what's going on with David Gabriel George? Do you think this offer to his best friend was something to kind of enhance the deal with him a little bit? What's going on there?
Yeah, so I still have Ohio State as my pick. This has been one of the most hotly contested recruiting battles nationally. And we kind of all knew it was going to come down to these two. You know, we talked about it recently, just like things are going to go back and forth. The rumor mill is going to go back and forth here the next few weeks. It's just how it's going to go. And people are just going to have to kind of wait and see what the decision is on the 22nd. If you get caught up in every little rumor, you're going to drive yourself insane. But I did briefly speak to Jordan about the offer. He told me he was really excited about it. He loves the atmosphere at Ohio State. And so I think, was it a move to help them with DGG? Possibly. But this is also a kid on his own who's, almost 6 feet tall and has like a 6'6" wingspan. So he's an interesting, like, raw athlete type. And they've historically liked to recruit guys like that anyway. So he has value beyond just his connection to David. But I think Carlos Loughlin has done an unbelievable job here. And I think that's going to carry the day. And I think, again, the NIL stuff's going to be out there about, this school's offering this and this school's offering that. I think Ohio State's not going to lose this over NIL. I really don't. They're going to be very competitive in that space in this particular recruitment. This is a guy they've specifically recruited the running back position a certain way the last 2 cycles just for this kid. So I think they're going to do everything they can in their power to get this done. And so I still, again, I kind of expect the Tennessee buzz to continue. I said it before they visited. I said, when he visits Tennessee, expect the buzz to start moving towards Tennessee. It's how this goes every time. But I still like where they're at there.
Yeah, Tennessee, I mean, we saw this a little bit with David Sanders last season, right? I mean, he is somebody that really got the A+ treatment, if you want to believe the rumors out there for the NIL deals and stuff like that. Those rumors are, again, going around with the package deal and everything else that's going on. But I'm with you. This is a recruitment to me that's not like David Sanders. It doesn't feel like Ohio State needed David Sanders the way that they do kind of need David, because of how they've set everything up and how they are kind of specifically going after him in this class and want him to be the guy that's a part of it. Even if a commitment to Tennessee does happen, I don't think it's over. I think Ohio State would continue on recruiting him and try to have the best relationship possible with him. But overall, this is one that I think whenever you get involved with a recruit with Tennessee, it's always going to be going a little haywire and crazy, not just because of the program, but if you're on Twitter and stuff like that at all, those Tennessee fans get pretty wild, Mark.
Yeah, we were talking about this on my recruiting show last week about kind of comparing this to the Bijan Robinson recruitment in terms of like Ohio State probably likes DGG more than any running back recruit they've recruited since Bijan Robinson. And we kind of joked like that, if this goes sideways on Ohio State, the Tennessee fans are, if you thought Texas fans were tough when they won the Bijan Robinson thing, wait if Tennessee wins this one. It's going to be way more obnoxious if Tennessee wins this one than Texas fans were on Bijan. But like I said, I think Loughlin has done really an unbelievable job here. I do think that's going to win out here. Obviously, there's a month before he decides, and who knows what will happen in the next 4 weeks, what rumors will emerge, and what crazy NIL packages will be rumored to have been made and things like that. But I think that relationship's going to win out.
Yeah, it's a good relationship, it sounds like. Another good relationship, they've had one with him for a while, is Brady Edmonds. And sounds like Brady Edmonds had some questions that he wanted answered from the Ohio State staff this weekend. And sounds like he did get the chance to ask those questions. He puts out his recruiting photos from the visit and everything else. So looks like things probably went well with Brady Edmonds. Where do you stand on with him and the thought process of what might the future hold with Brady Edmonds in Ohio State?
Yeah, and first of all, I do think no matter what happens here, I think we're going to get an answer in the next week or two. This is not going to bleed into the season. This is not going to bleed into August. Like this is going to be wrapped up one way or the other soon. The family doesn't want this to linger. Brady doesn't want this to linger. He wants to know where he's going. I think his heart is very much with Ohio State. It's been a tough thing for him. I think he's always known they were possibly going to take two quarterbacks. I think he just wants to know, like, hey, that's fine, but how do I still fit in the plans? Do you still see me as a good fit for this program, for this offense? And so I think this is probably going to stick, but UCLA is going to get a chance to counter now in terms of getting back in his ear and offering him the maybe a better path to the field, maybe playing up the Ohio State's might take another one, and are you a priority there? How the game goes in terms of the recruiting pitches and things like that. But I think the weekend went pretty well, and again, I think he's just gonna sit down with his family now and kind of figure this thing out. But I'm leaning towards him sticking. I'm not like married to that position yet, but that's where I'm leaning coming out of the weekend.
Do you feel like the Trey Taylor stuff has impacted this at all for Ohio State? Obviously, Trey Taylor was one that was kind of, being rumored that they were going after. I know he was just in Nebraska this weekend, and it sounds like that visit went really well. I think Khalil Taylor was their other big guy on camp. Well, big guy. He's, a big-time recruit on campus is what I mean, and sounds like he was recruiting him pretty hard. And Trey Taylor, sounds like on the Cornhuskers, and the Nebraska seems to be wanting to do this with Matt Rule, kind of go after a big time quarterback and try to bring him in and have him start early. So we'll see what that looks like there. But I can't help but look at this Trey Taylor situation and say he's just so committed to Nebraska that maybe Ohio State's looking at it and saying, let's just go with the for sure thing and stick with Brady Edmonds. Maybe he doesn't quite have the wheels. That's kind of been the rumor a little bit, that some people think maybe is what Ohio State is looking for a little bit, but he's still a guy that loves Ohio State and has a very good arm.
Yeah, I think, yes. Kind of agree on everything there. So I would be shocked if Trey Taylor didn't go to Nebraska at this point. I think that was always kind of a Hail Mary for any school, not just Ohio State. I think he's going to go there. I believe they've moved to Lincoln already. So there's not much there that would give you optimism if you're not Nebraska in this thing. Yeah. So I think that's going to stick for Nebraska. Certainly you're going to get the NIL package of all NIL packages from Nebraska. That's going to be, he's going to instantly be one of the highest paid people at the university. So I would not be putting my eggs in that basket if I were Ohio State or anyone else for that matter. So I think your read on that's correct. I think he's going to stick with Brady. He can rip it. We watched him in 7-on-7. I've seen him throw so many times at this point now, but just this past week, 7-on-7, and then the camp, he can really rip it. He's not super mobile. He's more mobile maybe now than he was a year ago because he was playing through some stuff injury-wise. I think that slowed him down a little bit. So he's, within the pocket, he's mobile enough. Is he going to remind anyone of Braxton Miller? No. But, we'll see. I think ultimately the other thing to consider here, and I hate to get into this too much because it just kind of seems to sour everyone on the sport of college football, but we're in an era now where there's no salary cap at this point. There's no structure in place. But schools don't have unlimited resources. And so you have what you have money-wise to work with your roster. The days of schools like USC used to do this, back in the day with like Pete Carroll and those guys. It's happened to other places too over the years where you would just get a 5-star quarterback every year. And yeah, one of them would eventually transfer, but like one of them, they'd wait their turn. Like, one guy would go and then they'd bring in the next 5-star and and so every year you're just churning a 5-star quarterback. You can't really do that anymore now that they're getting paid. You can't pay 3 5-star quarterbacks simultaneously. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't pay, like Julian saying, we all know is probably making a lot more this year than he was at this time last year. Like, you can't pay Julian Sayin, Tavian St. Clair, and Trey Taylor. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that anymore. And so there is something to be said for getting your 5-star guy one year, and then the next year getting your guy who, or even in the next 2 years in some cases, getting your guy who you think fits your system but may not command the high dollar NIL price of a 5-star quarterback, which is several $1 million a year before they've even set foot on, before they've done anything for you. It's several $1 million. Like, you're not getting Trey Taylor for under $3, $4, $5 million a year. You're just not. So, and then he's going to sit on your bench for a year or two if you're lucky and he doesn't transfer. So, like, there is something to be said for getting a Brady Edmonds every 2 or 3 years to kind of, and not that Brady's not going to get anything, but he's not going to command, like the $5 million price tag that we see on some of these other guys. And so there's a lot to me to be said for getting guys in between your 5-stars who are capable and want to be there and are good culture fits and all that good stuff, but that aren't going to cost you 7 figures before they've even taken a snap for you. And so that has to be factored in here as well, I think, if you're Ohio State. I mean, are you going to pay Julian Sayin, what you're paying him, and then Tavian St. Clair, and then you're going to bring in Trey Taylor? Okay, maybe Sayin's off to the NFL, maybe he's not. We'll see. But, then what are you going to do behind Taylor? You're recruiting Christopher Vargas, the 5-star kid out of Massachusetts, who was just on campus for the 4th time this past week. He's not going to be cheap. That's not so. You're going to pay all these quarterbacks simultaneously. You can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you got schools out there like Vanderbilt going after Jared Curtis, we saw how that worked out, flipping him from Georgia to Vanderbilt.
They can do it because he's their big money guy, and they can get him out on the field early there, and they won't land another one like they won't watch the next couple of years. They won't sign a 5-star quarterback the next 2 years. They won't pay one. They won't be paying Jared Curtis and another guy like that. They'll wait like 2 years till Curtis is like going into his draft eligible year, and then they might get play in that pond or whatever, fish in that pond. But they're not going to come right back and sign a Trey Taylor behind you. You can't really do that anymore.
Yeah, really feels like schools have to just kind of commit to the quarterback strategy at this point. It's either Indiana and Miami go after the transfer portal, in your quarterback, go after the super young guy like Vanderbilt and Nebraska, or you're just going to try to get the 5-star quarterback every other year or maybe once every 3 years, kind of like what it looks like Ohio State's doing here a little bit with Julian Sayin, Tavian St. Clair. Now going after Brady Edmonds. We'll see what they do in the next cycle with getting the guy after that. But yeah, it's very interesting just how crazy recruiting has come with all of this and trying to figure out what are schools trying to do. Every school is different, trying to figure out. The nice thing, though, is that defensive line recruiting seems to be very high for the Buckeyes. You get Carly Wilder last cycle. Larry Johnson has got some other guys in this cycle. Carlos May is another guy they're looking at. As Hankton, he had Blake Wong on campus as well this weekend. Any thoughts on the weekend visits? I know there were only 5 of them and 2 of the guys were committed, but Blake Wong, Carlos May, and I'm blanking on the third guy. I just had him on there the other day. Jordan. Was it Donahue?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So my real thought coming out of the weekend on Carlos May is kind of an interesting one. So Ohio State's got him very high on their board. Mm-hmm. And I know he's kind of maybe flown under the radar in terms of maybe not getting the publicity of some of their other defensive line recruits, targets they've been after, but they've got him extremely high on their defensive tackle board. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be competitive on this one in NIL. But you look at who they're competing against. So like everything is – if you listen to like Ohio State's perspective on this, when you talk to people over there, everything seems to line up pretty well. Like they think he's a great culture fit. They love him as a person. They love him as a player. They think they've got a shot. But you're recruiting the 300-pound defensive tackle from the heart of the South, and you're going against Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama. And those kids don't like to leave mama. It's the way it is. They don't like to leave their mothers. We've seen it over the years a million times. Ohio State's done a good enough. I mean, they've won a few of these, but there's always that like skepticism in the back of your mind of can they pull this off? I think they've got his attention. I'm still going to take the field over Ohio State right now, knowing how important it is for these SEC schools to keep guys like that down there, knowing how difficult it has been historically to pull guys like that out of SEC country. But I do think Ohio State's given them something to think about. I think they're in this. We'll see what happens. The decision is going to be soon. If he's got it's coming up very soon. All the dates are running together because there's like 7 guys right now that have dates in the next 3 weeks. But it's coming up soon. We'll see. Obviously we're going to stay on top of that one at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But I do think Ohio State's giving them something to think about coming out of the weekend. So that's maybe my big takeaway from the other guys this weekend. Blake Wong would be a nice get. I don't, the whole, he's a LDS Mormon.
BYU's going after him.
BYU in there, and it's like, oh boy, like that feels tough. Ohio State's very much they're an outlier in multiple ways on that. They're an outlier in terms of you got the 2 Utah schools there, especially BYU, but they're also an outlier geographically on this list. Now, maybe I'm just misreading this, and maybe I'm really dumb here, and it's like, well, they're the outlier, so it's obviously them, but it just doesn't feel like that one's going to be a win for them.
Yeah. Well, if you want updates on how it goes with Blake Wong, Carlos May, all the other guys out there, come on over to Buckeye Huddle and join us over there. Got the forum and the message boards and everything. Me, Marc Givler, Kevin Noon over there posting all the time. Andrew Ellis as well. And you can come check us out over there at Buckeye Huddle, where you get all kinds of good content, the message board, the good community of people over there that are talking Ohio State football and some Ohio State basketball stuff too. There's a little bit of Ohio State basketball stuff going on that we'll, I'm sure, get into at some point with Dusty May leaving Michigan, kind of opening the door a little bit for
that was shocking. That was really shocking.
I think Jake Diebler kind of woke up to Christmas a little bit with having Dusty May leave there. But anyway, we'll talk about that on a different episode. Mark, thank you for coming on. Everybody, thank you for listening and watching the podcast. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.